Hello fellow YouTubers, Monday, September 10, and it's been a beautiful day really, quite warm actually, it's going to stay that way now, it's springtime, winter's gone, but the nights are still cool to cold, that's good, but it won't be long before they're not, but anyhow I'm not going to go there, because I'm dreading summer already. Right. I had a pretty easy morning. I got up late, but I went to bed late. And I just did a couple of little jobs around the house. And but this afternoon I got the line trimmer out and line trimmed all the backyard lawn. And normally I can do that without taking a break. Now that all the gardens are down, it's a lot smaller. I can usually do that without a break. But not today. Today I was breathless. 3 times. That means I had to take 3 breaks, and then I had to. Then I got the blower out to blow some of the clippings away off the path and that always gets me. The blower always gets me. Anyhow, that's the way it goes when you got emphysema, COPD. Now I had a couple of comments, one in particular that suggested that the book I shot, and this is it, in yesterday's video. We're getting there. Might be more valuable. And I had a hint of that from another comment as well. So I'm thinking that I might put this with the remains of the bullet, if I can get it between there and the bullet. And I might put it up for sale to the highest bidder, bearing in mind that the cost of postage here in Australia is $15, and the cost of postage overseas is $35. So just bear that in mind. This is the book. The back of it's a bit of a mess, isn't it? Put my finger through it. Yeah. Anyhow, I will sign it, of course, and dedicate it to the person. If by chance someone puts in a high bid, I've already had a chap here in Oz who said he will go $1 above the highest bid, and but I'll put it up for auction. Well, not auction. I'll put it up for the highest bidder, so dedicated and signed to that person who is a successful bidder. I don't know if I can do that or not on YouTube, but we'll soon find out. So there you go. That's the book that was shot, and along with the pellet, the casing. What was left of the casing, there it is there. Not much, it tore to pieces. I suppose I could do a little reading. This won't be a long one because this is what happened the day after Cracker Night, and it happened all the time. After every Cracker Night, this went on all over Australia, I'm sure. It wasn't just exclusive to my friends and I. I'm sure this went on all over Australia, and you probably know what it is. But there was tomorrow to look forward to. There are always tomorrows to look forward to then. On Sunday morning, Richard, Hadley, Peter and I had gotten on the side of last night's festivities with a plan to simply scour the area with a fine-tooth comb, looking for all the duds. There's something on me here, it's an ant. And whatever else there might be lying on the ground worthy of redemption. But as we stood near the pile of grey ash and the still smouldering charred remnants of the bonfire, we were somewhat taken aback by what we saw. I don't know if they were thinking what I was, but I'd hazard a guess it was somewhere along the line of, God, what a mess. But it wasn't so much the large circle of burnt grass, unsightly as it was, that drew our attention, but rather the mess of paper fragments from the countless numbers of bungers, jumping jacks, and strings of tom-thumbs that had been detonated and torn to shreds by the force of each and every explosion. It was as if an enormous container of potpourri had been strewn all over the ground, 20 yards to all points of the compass. But there wasn't anything fragrant or colourful about it at all. Still, as much as we didn't like it, there wasn't anything we could do about it. For we were but 4. And trying to clean up that mess would have been like trying to separate grains of pepper and salt from a combination of the two. And besides, we were kids growing up in the 50s and 60s, and the word environment wasn't in our vocabulary. Wasn't in anyone's vocabulary, as far as I was aware. And if millions of people had made one hell of a mess but one night of the year, then so be it. That's just the way it was. And we had other things to do, more important things. And we wouldn't be alone, for across the length and breadth of this country, countless number of kids would be doing exactly the same thing. And like us, some would be planning to do what we were going to do. Strip away the compressed rolls of paper to redeem all the black powder and make a bomb. At least that's what we thought we would be able to do. We had thought, indeed expected, that inside every dud bunger there would be copious amounts of black powder. Had to be. As surely as the sun rose in the east and set in the west, there had to be. After all, the tiny tom-toms were packed with the stuff. But there wasn't anything like that at all, much to our dismay. When we returned to our backyard after our successful mission of seek and find, we reckoned the sum total of what we had found with what we already had in reserve would yield more than enough black powder to make something that would pale the awesome power of a sixpenny into insignificance by comparison. And we had it all figured out too. We had the ideal container, a small glass screw-cap Vegemite jar. I had found it in a cardboard box full of empty cans and glass jars Mum and Dad kept under the house. We had the tools, a paring knife, a hammer, a nail and a short length of 1-inch doweling, all courtesy of Dad's toolbox. It sat on the ground to one side of a brick pier just far enough under the house so that it wouldn't get wet when it rained. Dad didn't mind if he used these tools just as long as we put them back when we had finished with them. And knowing we could access it without having to ask suited or concerned just fine. I had still have that toolbox, as a matter of fact. And the toolbox was something of an enigma, like nothing any of us had seen before. There was only a toolbox in as much that it had Dad's tools. For it was actually a narrow, high-walled metal container with a double-hinged lid, 2 stout leather carry handles that once held belted .303 machine gun cartridges. And to this very day, I don't know how it came to Dad's possession. A war souvenir, perhaps. We had the fuse, left over from the strings of jumping jacks we had put aside after separating them. But when the first bungum was laid open, all our aspirations, all our confidence, all our optimism was replaced in an instant with disappointment, despair, and utter confusion. For there before our eyes, at the centre core, was nothing but a narrow strip of dull, orange, hard clay. What the? Is that it? Oh, gee, come on. Can't be. Can't be. Then I thought, maybe it's hollow. Yeah, that must be it. It's a tube. And when it's broken, there'll be oodles of the black stuff. Oodles and oodles of it. Not a dribble. That's all there was. A dribble. Enough to describe a couple of thumb smears on a piece of paper. A small piece of paper. You must be joking. How come these damn things go off with such a bang? Eh? Eh? Hang on. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Maybe there's something in the clay. Yes, that's it. A combination of the two. Has to be. Has to be. And as we busied ourselves stripping away and collecting all the cores in earnest, something else popped into our minds. Something we asked each other about then went quiet. Thinking. How did they put the small brittle clay tube inside the bunger without breaking it? And how did they put the black powder inside the clay tube? And with the thought process came the questions. Questions we really didn't know the answers to, but shot back paradoxical replies nonetheless. Maybe. I suppose so. I guess so. Perhaps. Yep. I don't think so. Probably. That could be. Possibly. Replies that we prompted more questions from each of us who weren't sure if what we were talking about as we progressed was a question, making a statement, or just a result of thinking out loud. But the whole thing was a conundrum. Something we put into the too hard basket because in the end, we just didn't know. Simple things. But the riddle had taken monotony away from the job at hand. And before we knew it, we had rendered our lot to a pile of paper on the ground and about half a cup of powder clay mixture. There was no stopping us now. Layer upon layer of the mixture, one atop the other about 1/4 of an inch at a time, was dribbled into the jar and compacted in turn using the hammer and one end of the piece of doweling until the jar was full to just overflowing. We certainly didn't know anything about the intricacies that went into the manufacture of a bunger, but we'd torn enough of them to pieces to know that if this thing was to have any chance at all of working, everything about it had to be as tight and compact as were those bungers. And it was. So much so that when the open mouth jar was held upside down and tapped with the handle of the hammer, not a trace of the contents were dislodged. Beauty. Now just a simple matter of punching a hole through the centre of the lid with the nail. Having Peter, he was the strongest, tightly screw the lid in place. Then bore a hole into the mixture with a nail to accommodate the fuse. All done. It was question and decision time. How long should the fuse be? It was a good question. A simple question. But then how much time did we need to distance ourselves from ground zero? After much deliberation, we settled on 10 seconds. And because we reckoned the fuse burned at a rate of about an inch a second, a foot length of fuse would give extra 2 seconds in reserve. Where would be a good safe place to detonate this marvel of puerile ingenuity? Hadley suggested the 44-gallon drum incinerator in our backyard. But Richard and I gave that idea the thumbs down in an instant. And with good reason. 2 days before cracker night, 2 days before cracker night, we decided to drop a penny bunger into that incinerator just for the hell of it. No damage was done, but the amplified noise was like a depth charge going off. Kaboom! And the force of the explosion sent a mass of black ash billowing high and all over the yard. St. Christ Mum didn't have any washing on the line. She had been testy enough as it was. Across the road between the piles of landfill, or the creek. Yeah, the creek. The high bank would afford protection from any glass fragments. And if we placed the bomb amid a pile of rubble, we would be able to see the result of the blast. For surely it would be powerful enough to blow the lot to kingdom come. Who would light the fuse? There was only one thing to do. The fair and equitable way. Whoever drew the short match was it. 5 minutes later, I was looking up at the three looking down at me. And I could tell by the way they were standing back and craning their necks to peer over the edge of the bank, and by the looks on their faces, that as soon as I lit the fuse they'd take to the heels and be off quicker than a bolt from the blue. And I wouldn't be far behind them. And that's exactly what happened. Yeah. The very instant the flame from the match touched the fuse, I could hear the impact of feet on hard earth and the sound of my heart thumping in my chest as I scrambled. As I scramble away, I'm counting down. 1 and 2 and 3. On 4 I reach the top of the bank. And 5 and... On 6 I'm on my feet. On 7 I'm running for all I'm worth. And 8 and 9 and... On 10 I'm standing by my brother's right side puffing and panting. On 11 I've cupped both hands over my ears. On 12, nothing. And 13, and 14, and 15, nothing! I slowly moved my hands away from my ears but kept them poised just in case. It's quiet. Very, very quiet. And eerie quiet. The sort of quiet that you experience when you see not too distant forked lightning and wait for the deafening sound of thunder, the silence before the storm. We wait. We look at each other, from one to the other, to the other, to the other. We purse our lips and shrug our shoulders. Why didn't it go off? Peter breaks the silence by saying he thinks the fuse must have gone out. Hadley and Richard agree. I don't. I was down there. I lit the fuse. I saw how alive it was. Could hear it hissing and crackling as I bid a hasty retreat. So I know it has nothing to do with the fuse. It's a dud. As much as we didn't want to admit it, no matter how positive we were, it's a dud. And it was. When as we stood near the edge of the bank looking at the thing in my hand we had such great expectations for, the silence returned. The sound of silence. The sound of one hand clapping. The sound of 4 minds thinking the same thing. What a bloody waste of time that was. But just like the threepenny bunger gun we couldn't build, it was probably a good thing that it was a dud. For as surely as night follows day, if it hadn't been, we would have progressed to building bigger and better ones. And only God knows what would have happened then. Simple things. That's it. That's enough. Oh, that's enough. Anyhow, I've gone dark again. Whatever. I can't. I've got a mug of tea here. It's probably cold. You can see there at the back of there's a lot of light there. That's shining off from that thing up there. The light. I want to thank you for watching. I'm as dry as a bone. Phew. And until next time, bye for now. Forgot what I was going to say.